Hello everyone, 5th favorite custom card reviewer here. I will be reviewing some custom cards today. Today we'll be going over an archetype based around gambling, and it's kind of broken, but I love the ideas that this archetype is, playing around with, which you'll see, once I go over them. So there's 5 cards here. First up we have Casino, which is the field spell card. It's kind of broken, so let's go over the effects real quick. When a gambler monster is special summoned, draw 1 card. Right off the bat, this first effect does not have a once per turn, a hard once per turn, or a soft once per turn. Just whenever a gambler monster is special summoned, you get to draw a card. That really needs a hard once per turn on it, and even then, that would be a really strong effect for a field spell. The second effect. When an effect requiring a coin flip or dice roll is activated, the controller of this card chooses the outcome. So, this card basically turns Cup of Ace into a Pot of Greed, because you can just choose the heads effect whenever you want. It kind of reminds me of that skill from Duel Links where like the first 3 results are heads no matter what, and it turns normally really bad gamble cards into actually kind of broken. But this one is just whenever you can choose the results. That's crazy. And also, if this card leaves the field, special summon a monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, a gambler monster. Not once per turn either, so special summon a gambler straight from your deck is really good, especially since this card just needs to leave the field for that effect to happen. So let's just go on to the other ones, because, this one's broken, not much more to say about that. It needs some fixing. But, I like the idea of some of the other cards. So next up we have Kakegurui. Kakegurui. I've seen the anime this is based on. I think I'd be able to say her name immediately, but I can't because there's too many vowels in there. Kakegurui, the Gambler. It's a level 6 spellcaster, 2300 attack. If this card is added to your hand by a card effect, you get to toss a coin. Heads, special summon this card. Tails, discard this card, then target 1 card in the field and banish that target. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting effect, because the thing with gamble cards is that a lot of them are just bad. They have like really negative effects that make it so that you're basically going -1 just using the card for no effect. When really, a good gamble card should allow you to do something with its negative effect as well. Or, well, actually, what it should be is like, the heads effect is good, and the negative effect should just be less good instead of absolutely terrible. And what's interesting about this, it's a monster card. Here's the thing with monster cards in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! You basically just want them to be able to special summon themselves and gain advantage in some way. And keeping true to the gambler nature of this card, if this card is just added to your hand, you have, the gamble of where you can special summon this card, which is actually pretty good. And the Tails effect, you discard this card in order to banish a target on the field, which is also good. So, I like this. Special summoning the card would probably be your intended effect. That way you can use it for extra deck plays. But also, if it's a Tails effect, you can just banish anything you want. I like the idea that, especially what I really like about it is that it activates from your hand instead of on the field, which I think is, for some reason, that just never occurred to me. Like having gamble cards activate in the hand first. And one of their positive effects would be, getting the monster on the field for free. I was like, wow, that is actually a good way to make a gamble deck viable. So next up we have Momo Bami, the Gambler. It's a level 4 spellcaster with low stats. Each time a coin toss result is heads, inflict 800 damage to your opponent. So notice the lack of a once per turn, and that's actually a pretty high life point damage amount at 800. So if you just get 10 heads from effects, that's an OTK. And I think its stat line is in line with like the Charmer archetype. I could be wrong on that though. Not that great. but there's probably potential for it to FTK, to be honest. It's just, I'm not a big fan of FTK decks, and those are usually kind of broken. Next up, we have Ryota, the Gambler. It is a level 4 spellcaster, 1500 attack. If this card is in your graveyard, toss a coin. Heads, special summon this card. Tails, banish this card. You see, I love this effect. It never occurred to me for a gamble effect to interact in this way. It's kind of like, if you had... there is a card like this. It's a water monster who has an effect that when it's in the graveyard, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard in order to, either special summon the card if the card you excavated was a water type monster, and if it's not, then it just stays in the graveyard. And this is kind of like that. You can get this card on the field. That's its heads effects. That's its good effect, is getting a monster. And its tails effect is negative, but since it's negative from the graveyard, it doesn't matter. And that's what's great about it. It also has another effect. You can send this card to the graveyard. Special summon 2 level 4 or lower gambler monsters from your deck. So, first off, send this card to the graveyard from where? You can send this card to the graveyard. From where? Can you send this card from your deck? There's not a once per turn on it either. There's just a complete lack of once per turns on all these effects. So, considering it doesn't say where to send it, there's no targets, I would assume it meant from the field. And if we go based off of those assumptions, based on context clues, this card can special summon itself from the graveyard. Bringing out 2 gambler monsters from your deck without a once per turn is really powerful. There's a reason Rescue Cat got errated, so that it would only, work once per turn. Okay. Next up, we have Saotome the Gambler. Level 4 spellcaster, 1800 attack. It should be 1850 if you wanted to synergize with the fairy tale archetype. When this card is normal or special summoned, add 1 casino from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Alright, searches out the broken field spell card. When a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated that targets a dark monster on the field, toss a coin. Okay. Heads, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Tails, add 1 gambler monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So, initially I'd think, wow, so you want to target your own cards with your own effects, that way you can search out. Because, the effect only activates if one of your dark monsters is targeted by a card effect, and there's lots of non-targeted removal in the game. Lots of just AoE stuff that coincidentally gets rid of everything. So it's not very good protection for, the heads effect. The tails effect is good though, where you get to just add a card to your hand. It's, should also mention the theme with all these cards, no once per turns. None of these know what a once per turn is. So that's the entire archetype. Basically, 2 of these cards really got my interest. The Gree the Gambler and Ryota the Gambler. Gamble effects that activate in the hand and in the graveyard, where their beneficial effect is being able to special summon that card. And the Tails effect, on Ryota, it's actually a bad effect. If it manages itself from the graveyard, it can't use its effect. And I like that idea. It's just the cards themselves are kind of broken. They're really broken, because here's the thing with custom cards. I did something new for this video, something I haven't really done before. And what I did was I actually read the cards first. People have been telling me to do this for the longest time, asking me to do it. And I was always very hesitant to actually read the cards beforehand, because I thought, one of the fun things about this is discovering the effects, live. Reading them for the first time and trying to figure out what the hell the card is trying to do. Stumbling through poor PTSD. I'm pretty sure I didn't say that right. Problem-solving card decks, all that stuff. I thought that, that stuff's kind of fun, but after I've done so many of them, I've kind of come to the conclusion that, the people who like to make custom cards are also not the kinds of people who play Yu-Gi-Oh! In any kind of competitive manner. And it's really evident by like the effects the cards have and how they're obviously missing some very important things, or they're just really broken. So, you know, I kind of like set some parameters on here. You know, it's nice if the effects are very thematic and they fit the theme that's trying to go out. But if that theme isn't at least tier 3, then I'm probably not going to read it anymore. Because, like, you know, tiers in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are purely devised based on, like, tournament results. Tier 1 decks are just decks that constantly top tournaments. Tier 2 decks are rogue decks that can occasionally top tournaments as well. Very rarely, and they, you know, occasionally have good matchups against the Tier 1 decks. And Tier 3 are just, like, good decks that are just power crept by the Tier 1 and 2 decks. You know, that's all it is. They're not bad decks. They're just decks that exist in a game where there's like 10 other decks that are better. That's all it is. And that's kind of what I'm aiming for with these, is they should at least be around tier 3. You know, good decks that could possibly, if they got really lucky, you know, top a tournament or something. They don't need to be tier 1. They don't need to be super viable. They don't need to be super consistent or anything, but they at least need to be better than ice barriers, you know? Like, so many of these are obviously like tier 8, you know, tier 9. There's no such thing. It only goes from 3 to 0. But, you know, if there were more tiers, that's what a majority of the cards are that I found. And, you know, if I'm just reading these randomly, because I think the theme of it is cool, and it turns out it's just another archetype that's worse than ice barriers, I don't know. I'm probably just going to look them over beforehand first and see if they have interesting ideas and if they could possibly be tier 3 in some kind of capacity. This archetype, with how broken it is, you know, tier 1, so it kind of breaks the rules a little bit. It's really strong, but it's also strong for the wrong reasons, because a lot of the effects are just missing once per turns on them. Or they're just ridiculously powerful. It's like, it's not properly balanced. This is like a good concept of an idea. And these cards just really need some balancing because most of them are just completely busted. So, you know, if I was going to give a rating to this archetype because of how broken they are, like if an archetype is too powerful because their effects are just obviously, you know, not balanced like most of these cards are, I'm also going to, you know what, those are fine. I kind of like those. But, you know, if it's too ridiculous, I'll probably treat them as the same way as, you know, decks that aren't as good as ice barriers. And in this archetype right here, you know, I like the idea behind it, but the effects aren't balanced. It's missing proper problem-solving card text. So I give it like a 6 out of 10, I guess. Leaning towards a 5, just because I like the ideas behind it. It's just the cards themselves aren't balanced. So, you know, with that being said, keep sending me custom cards. I'm just going to like read them first from now on. So that should stop archetypes where they do a whole bunch of complicated things just to gain 500 attack points or something. So if you wish to send in custom cards, just send them over to my Twitter. There's a Discord and a Reddit subreddit if you're interested in sharing custom cards with other people who like custom cards. All those things will be linked in the video description. So until next time, everyone's 5th. I should probably let people know there's lots of people who are watching these videos for the first time. I say I'm the 5th best custom card reviewer. There aren't any others. You know, just a little secret. Pull the veil from people's eyes. You know, it's kind of a joke. I'm not really being self-deprecating here. I'm just making a joke about how there are no other custom card reviewers. So, you know, until next time.